Welcome to Versus. This new video series is all about taking on popular theists, atheists, and YouTube personalities. No one is immune from criticism. This week, I take the amazing atheist to task on his irrational defense for eating animals and his condemnation of veganism. For those who may not know, The Amazing Atheist, also known as TJ, is an infamous atheist vlogger who I find antagonistic, vulgar, and infinitely opinionated, often to his own detriment. You're either a fan or you hate him, and many in the atheist and humanist community have distanced themselves from his loud, in-your-face approach that often seems to work against the efforts for a secular, rational, and skeptical world. Without any further ado, now on with the show.
Cows, chickens, and pigs. Three animals that have succeeded tremendously under the wardship of human beings. And I can already hear you animal rights types protesting. Whoa! We eat them! How can you say they're successful when we're eating them? Doesn't make sense to me, man. Your burger is harsh and my mellow.
To suggest that because cows, chickens, and pigs have large numbers due to our demand for their bodies and secretions, they are somehow privileged and better off than the countless other species on the planet is to prioritize species population over the quality of life and an individual's right to life and freedom. Perhaps from a purely evolutionary standpoint, if a large species population could be made sustainable, it would be considered better than a smaller species due to the better chance for species survival. But from a moral perspective, it's much more important to consider the quality of life rather than the quantity of it. Having said all this, it is readily apparent that keeping 58 billion animals is not sustainable, and a major strain on the environment and our health. Often I find it helpful to abstract these arguments into the human context and see if we find the arguments satisfying. Would it be better to have 15 billion people on Earth who struggle to survive and maintain healthfulness? Or would it be preferable to have a smaller population of, say, 5 billion people and have enough resources and opportunity for a higher quality of life? If we use the amazing atheist's argument that more equals better, then why would that not be the case in the human context? At the end of his less than reasonable argument, TJ acts out in the stereotypical and wholly inaccurate representation of a vegan as a hippie. While there are no doubt some hippies that are vegan, I would wager that the large majority of people who self-identify as such are not vegan or even vegetarian. This association is an attempt to dismiss vegan arguments by aligning the concern of other animal species to the free love and heavy drug use of the 1960s. This is an obvious ad hominem attack and beneath anyone who values reason and evidence.
The red jungle fowl, progenitor to the modern chicken, is an obscure bird confined to a lonely corner of Asia. The chicken, on the other hand, is a dominant global force. There are 8 billion chickens on the planet. They outnumber us. Cattle have been domesticated for over 10,000 years. There are 1.3 billion cows. Pigs have been domesticated for about as long, and there are 2 billion pigs on this planet.
In this clip, we find the amazing atheist painting a skewed picture of reality using emotion-laden terms in which he claims that the obscure red jungle fowl is confined in a lonely corner of the world, while the modern domesticated chicken is supposedly a dominant global force. Here we are being led to believe that the wild animal who is free to make their own choices, who they mate, where they call home, what they eat, and how long they live, have actually got the wrong end of the stick. The amazing atheist is actually attempting to argue that an animal's life is better when domesticated, controlled, and limited, and ended way before a natural death would occur. This is beyond preposterous and a pathetic argument that is a feeble attempt to justify the use and destruction of billions of sentient beings. Ending off this clip, the amazing atheist brings up cow and pig populations, and again we find faulty logic wherein the quantity of members within a species is deemed the primary and important indicator of a successful and happy existence, rather than the quality of life of each individual. There is a place and time to look at the whole species and make decisions that benefit the large majority, And then there are times that the rights of the individual are of primary concern. We recognize that the rights of the many do not outweigh the rights of the few. If we believe that only the species as a whole matters, and individual rights come secondary, we would have to be okay with forcing some humans into painful biomedical experiments, or act as forced organ donors. One healthy adult has enough body parts that could in theory help dozens of people survive or have an improved quality of life, yet we reject a society that would allow such disregard for bodily autonomy.
Meanwhile, there are about 20 to 40,000 lions, 200,000 gorillas, and about 100,000 wolves. So, why do lions, gorillas, and wolves suck at proliferating their genes compared to cows, chickens, and little piggies? You know why, folks? It's 'cause we don't eat them.
The Amazing Atheist furthers his irrational arguments by listing out the comparatively small wild populations of lions, gorillas, and wolves. What's interesting is out of all the animals he could have chosen, he lists 2 predators and 1 endangered species. Predatory species almost always have populations smaller than their prey, because without sufficient food, the predatory species declines. There is a natural ebb and flow in the predator-prey population dynamics, and when the prey species is either being overly hunted by the predators or exterminated due to human interference, the natural population of the predator will decrease as well. In regards to the inclusion of the endangered gorilla into his list, he has failed to point out that this species has been poached for bushmeat and sport, had their habitat destroyed, and suffered massive losses due to the Ebola virus in Central Africa. The Amazing Atheist has specifically cherry-picked predators and endangered animals to contrast against the unsustainable mass production of farmed animals, and again furthers his claim that the proliferation of genes through large populations at any cost is something desirable. He again dismisses the individual animal within the species and takes only a species-wide position that favors his utility of animals. You can tell a lot from the way a person argues their position. Here we have the Amazing Atheist stoop to a vulgar display of mockery in which he shoves animal parts into his mouth in an attempt to show his utter disregard for the moral objections vegans hold against using and eating animals. These grotesque close-up shots are meant to antagonize animal defenders into acting out of emotion, rather than respond in a reasoned, mature manner. When a person's intellectual justifications for eating animals are so thin, it is not unexpected to see such cheap tactics utilized, but it is disappointing.
If everyone on Earth became a vegetarian, livestock would be fucked. Fucked. You think slaughtering them for their meat was mean? Try driving them to fucking extinction. That's real mean.
Oh look, more mockery. Always a sign of a well-reasoned argument supported by evidence. Here we are being presented with a claim that the extinction of a species we have created, through thousands of years of careful breeding, is ultimately much worse than our continued present use and abuse of said species. Not surprisingly, once again, the Amazing Atheist, who right about now feels much less than amazing, prioritizes the quantity and survivability of a species over the quality of life of each living member. I would argue, and I believe many people in history would agree, that life is not worth living if all you have is pain, misery, and imprisonment. What's the point of living if you are miserable with no hope of escape? History is full of stories of slaves in despair having lost their families and homes, torn away from everything they know, to be transported far away. Many have taken their own life rather than live in indefinite servitude to their tyrannical masters. Many terminally ill and severely injured people wish for the sweet release of their suffering instead of living out a few wretched months or years. Yes, TJ, we vegans are the real meanies, because we selfishly feel empathy for other living, thinking, sentient beings, and many of us would rather see the end of the entire species if it would mean that future billions can be spared the same brutal fate. Nice try in attempting to make those who care seem like callous assholes.
We always talk about protecting animals' habitats. Well, for cows and chickens and pigs, factory farms are their habitats. If we don't breed them, if we don't eat them, then they go extinct, or at least their numbers dwindle.
Really, TJ? When animal advocates and environmentalists speak about protecting animal habitats, we speak of natural habitats, not ones of our own creation. Farmed animals live in confined spaces often far remote from anything they would ever consider natural. They live short, pathetic lives where every action is controlled, all to satisfy our insatiable appetite for their flesh. The Amazing Atheist is attempting to be clever and failing miserably. It is not a rational moral argument to enslave billions of animals in some contorted sense of species conservation. The reality is, few people, if any, actually eat animals out of a sense of obligation to keep the species around. Rather than address the real reasons people eat meat, i.e., perceived nutritional requirements, appealing to a naturalistic fallacy, superiority of the human species, etc., the Amazing Atheist skirts around the issue, creates some weak sauce arguments, and ties it all together with crude mockery.
And if you really want to get lions off of the endangered species list, then the next time you're at McDonald's, order yourself a Simba burger. Eventually, some enterprising young capitalist will take note, and we'll start factory farming lions, and voila! They'll be off the endangered species list. They might even skyrocket to have a population in the billions, just like pigs and cows. Sounds like a good deal for the lions.
Did you hear that? The Amazing Atheist's best argument for protecting wild animals from extinction is to enslave, domesticate, and create burgers out of them. By that logic, let's solve all the world's hunger problems by rounding up impoverished children, enslaving them into a life of servitude, and in exchange we pay them with food. I guess we ought not to be shocked by TJ's responses here, as he has a long history of creating videos meant to antagonize rather than inform. But even for him, these arguments supporting of animal consumption are rather uninspiring and devoid of any real effort. If you haven't already done so, check out my new website, forum, and store. On TheVeganAtheist.com, you will find all past videos, resources, and links. On the Vegan Atheist forum, continue the discussion with fans and critics. Here, everyone is invited to share their perspective, ask questions, debate, give feedback, or just say hello. If you are a staunch theist or meat eater, I would love to have you come and present your case for God, your holy book, or your non-vegan position. And lastly, check out the Vegan Atheist store, where you can pick up some custom tees featuring my vegan and atheist messages. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, show your support by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel here. Subscribers get notified the moment a new video is uploaded onto YouTube. Also, follow me on my Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus pages. All links are in the description below. Lastly, check out my channel where you can find all my other video series, debates, and lectures.